Othering Podcast explores the world of marginalized communities with a focus on the disabled and LGBTQ+. In our discussions, we will provide a platform for our guests to advocate and share their stories. By delving deep into their difficulties and successes, we will explore the changes necessary to improve lives everywhere. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, today we will be talking to Cote. She is a disabled and neurodivergent advocate, student, and an aspiring speech-language pathologist. She lives with POTS, fibromyalgia, and recently underwent brain surgery for hydrocephalus. Kai is passionate about disability justice, accessible healthcare, and reshaping the narratives we tell about illness, identity, and resilience. Drawing from both personal and professional experience, she's especially interested in communication, accessibility, and patient-centered care.
You can talk, can't you?
No, I needed my glasses there. I couldn't read.
Yeah, well, I keep telling you to put them on, but of course you don't. Sorry.
Hi, anyway, Kai. How are you?
You get to be witness to our first argument on.
Lovely.
So how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Good. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you just gave a good overview there, but...
You wrote it.
Yeah. I'm currently a student. I'm just graduating now with my bachelor's degree. I just finished it, so that's exciting.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm in the fall going to start my master's in speech-language pathology. And through that I hope to continue my disability advocacy work, and especially around like neurodivergence.
Yeah, I wanted to dig right in, talking about the brain surgery. How long ago did you have that? That wasn't too long ago, was it? About a year?
No, it was about 6 months
6
ago.
months? Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, I can only imagine brain surgery is awful.
Well, I expected it to be a lot worse than it was. Mm-hmm. The anticipation was the worst thing. It actually, at least like the surgery itself and the initial recovery was way smoother than I could have hoped. So
good.
That was, but yeah, absolutely. Like the fears and anxieties leading up to it were probably the hardest thing to deal with.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every day that, you go in and get your brain opened up and all so it kind of, I would imagine the lead up to it would be terrifying more so than the actual act of the surgery.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a bit of a weird situation because like I had the diagnosis of hydrocephalus for 3 years before I ever saw a neurosurgeon in person, which is quite unusual, but that's kind of how it happened. And so like brain surgery was like in the back of my mind because that's the only real treatment for it.
Right.
For a long time, but I didn't quite expect when I got into the neurosurgeon that they would say that it was something that needed to happen like pretty much right away, because like other doctors kind of had different opinions. They didn't seem overly like concerned about it or that it was time sensitive or anything, so it was quite a surprise. And then when they did say that I needed it soon, I got put on an emergency cancellation list. So I had no like set date for the surgery. It was just like probably within the next month you'll get a call with like 2 to 3 days notice, and that'll be when you have to come in and get your skull drilled into. And so that was
no wonder your anxiety was so high.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed with hydrocephalus late in life, weren't you?
Yeah, at 20, which
wow.
There's different types of hydrocephalus. There's a certain type that shows up more in older adults, but the type that I have they think was present from birth, so it's definitely unusual for it to go undetected until early adulthood.
Yeah. I would think that they would have, I don't know, like noticed, or because, for example, when we saw some of your baby pictures talking about your hydrocephalus, and the size difference
Yeah.
I don't mean to make this come off
No.
like
Like,
there's something
I
wrong.
comment
But
on it. I'm fully aware.
it's just
You can see it.
you could see the difference. And I would
Yeah.
like when our kids were born, they made reference to that and they were like, your kids' heads are large. Why is that? And I said, well, I have a big head. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. But they immediately noticed that and made mention of it. So I would have thought that for you, that they too would have thought about, well, maybe we should kind of look at this and check this
Yeah.
out and see why there's such a difference.
Yeah, me too. In hindsight, I think that, like, so they did measure, like, the head circumference at every visit. Like, my mom has told me, and she has records of, like, the measurements that the nurse wrote down. But the doctor never even commented on that it was larger than
Wow.
average, even. Not like, oh, it's a bit large, but probably fine because she's not showing any other signs. Like, there was no mention of it. And my parents, in hindsight, they're like, wow, how did we not, like, see that something was going on?
Yeah.
Because I also didn't have hair until I was like 3, so it was pretty obvious. But I was their first kid, and they just kind of thought, I don't know,
Yeah.
a variation of normal or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I would think that, speaking from experience myself, when our kids, especially our oldest, was born, I kind of relied a lot on the doctors to kind of tell me, oh, by
Yeah.
the way, this isn't normal or this is normal. And I think when you're going with your kids throughout life, you kind of hope that your doctors have an idea of what's going on so that you can
Right,
kind of
yeah.
catch things before,
Yeah.
the kid is in their 20s or 30s getting diagnosed with something that could have been easily taken care of many years before.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they were definitely.
Were
That's
were you diagnosed late with your other diagnoses as well, with like the POTS and the neurodivergence?
the POTS, I think, is typical to be diagnosed at the age that I was, and it was only a few years after I had started having symptoms. But yeah, with the autism, I was diagnosed at 17, so that's sort of late, but it's not atypical for
Yeah, not
women
unusual.
who are like higher masking and stuff like that.
Are you going to need brain surgery again? Is that something that's going to be recurring?
That's a good question, because it's different from person to person.
Okay.
Usually it won't last, like the surgery won't last your whole lifetime, but the number of surgeries that someone may need varies very much. So some people, it's like two or three in their lifetime. Some people I've heard up to like 300 brain surgeries.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
So it definitely it varies a lot.
Have they mentioned kind of like to you about how your prognosis is going to be? Like, do they think that you might need more, or it just depends on kind of day?
Yeah, it's not easy to predict. Like, so far, the surgery has been successful, but yeah, things can definitely change over the years, and especially as the brain ages, things can shift. So it's kind of taking it like one step at a time and seeing how things go.
Enjoy it while it lasts and
Yes.
hope it doesn't
Yeah.
happen. So growing up, since pretty much you had no diagnoses until 17, pretty much out of high school, did you have a rough time growing up with peers, school, etc.?
Definitely, yeah. I guess the biggest thing with that would have been my neurodivergence is what stood out from a young age.
Yeah.
Because with my other conditions, I didn't really have major symptoms as a
Right.
child. But yeah, with the autism, it was definitely difficult socially always. And it was kind of like always wondering like what I was missing or if there's something wrong with me, but I didn't know what.
Right.
Yeah. So
And with that, was it relief when you felt it, or was it more like a, oh well, kind of feeling like, because I've read like some people, I myself am in the process of kind of exploring the diagnosis because I grew up and I always felt like I didn't respond in certain cases normally. In other cases, I felt like I was just 100% normal. But
yeah.
and for me, the journey of discovering is kind of like, oh, that's why. That is
Yeah.
so. It was a relief for me. Was that kind of how it is for you, or?
Yeah, it definitely was. I kind of found it out by accident because I was when I was in my senior year of high school, I was doing some research I was interested in occupational therapy at the time, and there were some videos talking about different therapies for kids with autism, and they were describing some of the traits. And then I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. Weird. Yeah. And then And then I kind of did a bit more research and found a video of a woman who was just a few years older than me talking about her experience being diagnosed and growing up. And it was like she was describing me exactly. So from there, yeah, that's what led me to pursue a diagnosis.
Was there a lot of change? And maybe Dory kind of just asked this, but did you really notice a change once you were diagnosed versus beforehand, or?
Definitely in the way that I saw myself and
Okay, yeah.
like self-acceptance. Like it didn't happen overnight, but it was definitely a catalyst in helping me to, yeah, accept some things about myself that I had always kind of hated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a little more confidence.
And blamed myself for. So it was definitely, yeah, freeing.
Yeah, that's kind of like I had one of the biggest things that I had read about was the fact that you daydream a lot. And I remember getting all of my teacher's notes back saying, oh, she's not paying attention. She either talks a lot or she never says anything, and she's a daydreamer. And I always remember kind of feeling bad about myself about doing that. And it's like one of those things you can't control. And I thought you were supposed to be able to control it.
Yeah.
And then when I read about, oh, it's a, an indicative of neurodivergence, I'm like, oh, well, that explains a lot. And it kind of made me feel a lot better about my experiences and understanding why, you react certain ways to certain things, even though it seems like I'm way out of proportion or it's not even about me, but I can't help but react that same way.
As far as when you were growing up and your parents, do you feel like they helped you a lot and were aware of the situation? And I don't mean to have you say anything bad about your parents or anything you don't want to say, but just in general, do you feel like you had a lot of good support with family and friends?
Yeah, I think I've gotten really lucky with my parents, especially my mom. Like she didn't know what it was or what was going on, and she never labeled it or thought that there was anything wrong with me, but she did notice that I struggled with certain things more than my peers. And she never made me feel bad about it. We just worked on it. Like she helped me practice whatever it was. Even from like the time I was a toddler, I had some more trouble with motor skills than other kids. And she just like bought a tiny slide with stairs to put in the living room, and she would like encourage me to like climb up the stairs over and over again. It was like sometimes I think of her as like my unofficial occupational therapist growing up. I think.
Yes. That is really cool that she did that, because sometimes, like, when I was growing up, and I'm dating myself here, they didn't have a lot of those types of things to really help. And so my mom, she did the best that she could with us, but she always knew that that we were different, is how she always liked to kind of put it, is that it wasn't a bad thing, just we were different. And she knew, but she didn't know where to go.
And back then, there wasn't much to know about it. They didn't really know about diagnosing autism and stuff. So, especially when you were little, Dory.
Yeah, no, again, dating myself there, like, back in my day, they didn't even have TVs. They just had, like, we put together radios or something.
So what do you feel your biggest challenge is nowadays? Do you feel pretty confident now, or do you still have a lot of challenges from both autism and the brain surgery and complications or whatever may arise?
Yeah, I feel very lucky that the brain surgery went well and that I've had a lot of good support since my diagnosis with autism. But yeah, there are definitely still challenges, especially with the autism socially. I think it'll always be a challenge. It's kind of like you're speaking a different language than other people that aren't neurodivergent. And so it can be isolating, and it can be like every time I'm in a social situation, I'm definitely out of my comfort zone. And then with the hydrocephalus, there's some lingering symptoms still, even though the surgery went well. Like headaches and some vision issues and things like that. But it's definitely better than it was. But it's still something I manage day to day.
So what made you decide to talk about your diagnoses? Like, what was the impetus that just said, you know what, I need to talk about this?
Yeah, it was the hydrocephalus was the main thing, because when I first got diagnosed and I was doing research and trying to find information about like people or experiences similar to my own, I couldn't find very much at all. It was mostly geared towards parents of children or the type of hydrocephalus that is in older adults, if it was adult information. And then if it was like adults with hydrocephalus from birth, it was people that had been treated like shortly after birth and had never known anything different. So it was, yeah, kind of isolating that I couldn't find anything that mirrored my own experience. And I thought that if I couldn't find anything, then maybe I could be the person that others could see themselves in if they were in a similar situation. So that's kind of how that started.
I like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's really cool.
because it is true that just trying to look up a little bit about hydrocephalus, everything I saw was infant and, how to tell if your infant has that and what to ask the doctor if your baby has that.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't much. I mean, I barely saw much about the adult onset hydrocephalus. And so I would imagine that it was very frustrating to kind of have to, it feels almost like you're flying blind.
Yeah, definitely.
And it kind of annoys me though too, because
Yeah.
sorry,
The medical field annoys me.
yeah,
Every day.
Yeah.
you aren't the only person. I seriously doubt that you are the only person in the entire world that has, a late diagnosis. And why isn't there anything out there for that? And why don't we know more about this? Because that's kind of a really important thing to understand and know about, instead of just walking around and you get headaches and, oh, you're a girl, or, oh, you're young, who cares?
Yeah, for sure. I found that even like when I first got diagnosed, my doctors were not familiar with the situation at all. So I got news of the diagnosis over the phone, and it was my like primary care doctor just reading the MRI report, and I was asking him like, what does this mean though for me? And he was kind of like, I don't know, like
That's really bad.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
So I turned to Google. And then even like neurosurgeons, when he didn't know, my primary care doctor talked to this neurosurgeon over the phone. Like I didn't talk to him directly, but he looked at my scans, and like my scans are pretty obvious. It doesn't look like a normal brain.
Yeah.
But he said, oh, well, like if she's had this from infancy, and basically if she hasn't dropped dead by this point, like it's probably not gonna cause serious problems. Why would it cause problems now? But it is like a known thing in research that it can be compensated for some time and then decompensate. But he was obviously not familiar with that, even as a neurosurgeon. So that was,
Dropping dead's a little late to realize it's a problem.
yeah.
You want to fix it before that, I would think.
I would hope.
Oh, damn, she's dead. I guess we could fix her now.
That neurosurgeon like didn't recommend any treatment or follow-up or anything, and I could have just took his word for it and not gone any further. Like they weren't going to refer me to a neurologist or anything. Who knows what situation I'd be in now, but like I did my research and it wasn't matching up with anything that I was reading. So I pushed my primary care doctor to refer me to a neurologist, and they did further scans like when I got into them a while later, and it showed that there was some progression on the MRI, which was showing that it wasn't stable like the neurosurgeon was assuming. And then from there, they refer me to a neurosurgeon who said, yeah, we need to do something about it.
Yeah, thank God for that. I mean,
that's not right.
No.
Doctors should know better.
Yeah.
And again, it's hard to know everything about everything. We understand that. But you should say, look, this isn't the usual cases that I, come across. How about you see this person? He might be able to help you. Or say, I don't know. How about we kind of come up with a solution together?
Yeah, exactly.
And don't just brush us off and say, well, doesn't look bad to me. And if they're not dead now.
So what were your symptoms that made you see the doctor in the first place? Was it just a lot of headaches, or was there more to it than that?
It started with kind of really subtle double vision every now and then. It wasn't all the time. And that I just brushed off because it can be a number of things, just eye strain for one. And then it became more and more frequent, and the headaches set in, and it wasn't like a typical headache that I had ever experienced. It kind of felt like, which makes sense now knowing what the condition is, like my brain was being squeezed from the inside.
Oh, wow.
And when I would describe it to doctors, they thought that I meant like a tension headache. And they were like, well, oh, it's just stress, but that wasn't.
No,
That sounds unpleasant.
no,
Yeah.
that sounds definitely different than a tension headache. A
Yeah.
tension headache is from the outside, pushing
Exactly.
it, not from the inside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is that something you had for your entire childhood? Or did it get worse as you got older?
No, I didn't have that at all until like a few months before I had the MRI. So
Oh,
like
okay.
20. And the other thing I noticed, which probably should have raised some alarm bells sooner, was that my eyeballs were pointing in different directions
Oh, wow.
suddenly
Yeah, that
at different times. Like,
Wow, that would have
yeah,
been a huge red flag. I would think
yeah,
that if you're normally, your eyes are normally facing forward, and then all of a sudden the next day they're in
Yeah.
two different directions, I would have thought, okay, we need to see something. We need to do something right now, not wait until you're
yeah.
dropping dead.
Ideally, yeah.
I'm glad that, they were able to fix at least, or not fix it, but like help you so that
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of the lingering issues
Yeah.
that you had prior.
Sure. Me too, definitely. The surgery that they did is also not the most common surgery for hydrocephalus. The most common is a shunt, so like a mechanical device that they put in your brain that drains the fluid manually.
Okay.
But for me, because certain types of hydrocephalus are better candidates for this alternate surgery, it's called an endoscopic third ventriculostomy, and it's just they make a hole in the one of the fluid-filled spaces in the brain, so it creates like an alternate pathway to bypass the blockage that is preventing the fluid from draining, and it's considered to be less invasive than the other one. So, yeah, I'm very lucky that it worked, and not all surgeons will do that one either. Like it's more specialized. It's less invasive in a sense, but it's more precise. Like if you make
Okay.
a wrong move, it's catastrophic. So
I get you.
yeah. So I got really lucky that one, that there was a neurosurgeon willing to do it, and that he was in my city. Like that's really,
You got very lucky, and I'm glad
yeah,
that there was somebody there that could help you. Because
yeah,
sometimes, when you go to look for certain specialties, and they're just like, they kind of only know like certain aspects about it, and they don't even recommend anybody else. It's
yeah.
scary, or can cause worse issues. Like, I mean, I went to an ortho, different thing, but I went to ortho, and my legs were kind of giving out on me, and they were hurting a lot, and he said, oh, just walk it off. I don't see anything. And it's like, okay. And
Something really needs to be done with the medical field.
yes,
It's out
definitely.
of control.
That and insurance. So, did you have any issues with your insurance?
So I'm
Speaking
in
of them?
Canada.
Okay, yeah.
So
So you got
that's
lucky on that part.
yes, yeah.
I wanted to talk about your POTS, and the reason is I went through some stuff recently where I've had symptoms that kind of look like it might be POTS. I was never
Okay.
diagnosed, it may not be that,
Yeah.
but from that, it just kind of makes me more curious about it and to learn more about it.
Yeah.
I know a big thing with POTS is fainting. Is that something that you experience with it?
No, and like that's the thing you see the most, but I've learned that it's actually like a minority of cases where people faint,
really?
at least on a regular basis. It's like 30%, and 70% is not a thing that happens often.
Okay.
So it hasn't been a thing for me. Like when I was first having issues and wasn't treated, I would like almost faint a lot, but it was never like a full.
So, when you'd almost faint, that pre-syncope stage,
Yeah.
what can you kind of explain what that is like?
Yeah.
I mean, I've only passed out once, and that was from asthma attack. So,
Yeah.
my experience with it is totally different.
Yeah, well, for me, I think it probably varies from person to person, but for me, yeah, it's with standing, obviously. So I'll stand up and then feel kind of lightheaded, and then my vision will start to dim.
Okay.
Sometimes more than other, like there's more a scale of severity. Like sometimes it was just brief, and then it would recover, and sometimes it was more intense. But yeah, and then there's like a ringing in the ears and like a woozy feeling. Sometimes I don't know. My body is really good at not fainting, apparently, because sometimes I would be standing and like my vision would be completely gone, like completely dark for like a minute, but I'd still be like standing.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay.
Do
Yeah.
you remember after that happens, or is it all
Yeah.
like you black out?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
you
remember. So
Wow,
it's-
that's
yeah.
scary.
Yeah, I would think that would be a big kind of scary thing
Yeah.
to be standing there and then all of a sudden the lights go out. Did you ever have, like, you mentioned that you graduated with your bachelor's. When you would have to go to classes and such, were they accommodating, or was it difficult to kind of get the professors and the school to really understand what you were going through?
For the most part, it was pretty good. The accommodations I got were mainly for autism and like testing accommodations and stuff like that. And I guess generally in class, like you're seated, it's not really different from being at home. The only thing is sometimes, I mean, fatigue is a big thing for me, so that could interfere. And in general, like I've had some accommodations for flexible deadlines and things for just the unpredictability of my health issues, so that was helpful. But there were a few classes because I did some biology that were lab based, and there was a lot of standing in those and like going out in the field and stuff, so that was more challenging for sure. And I found that like we would have to go, I don't know, look for critters and outside and then walk back like a 10-minute walk uphill and then climb like 5 flights of stairs. And then by the time we got to the lab and had to do 2 more hours of like intensive, like cognitive tasks, my brain was just done. Like,
Yeah, I can understand that.
Do you have issues with like heart racing or anything like that from doing simple tasks?
for sure, yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
that's
probably
that's
the
something
main
I
thing.
had or
Yeah.
have that kind of made me lean towards POTS as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely have that. Sometimes he'll walk in with the groceries and then he goes to sit down and it's almost as if he ran a marathon.
Yeah,
And
for
that's
sure a thing, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're somewhere in a line and you have to stand there for 20, 30 minutes or 15 minutes, is that really difficult?
It is. I don't have to do it often. I guess I don't go out much in general. I admit
Can
that.
understand.
Yeah, but I recently went to vote, and there was usually like we do advanced polls or whatever, so it's like a very quick process, but there was like a line out the door, and it was over 30 minutes just standing there, and it was like the heat makes it worse too, and for some reason it was really warm in that building, so that was definitely challenging. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's when the pre-syncope kind of gets started. And
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
Thankfully, not that day. I was hoping and praying I wouldn't make a scene there, but yeah.
understandable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and knowing that that's going to happen, I can certainly understand not wanting to go out much
Yeah.
and kind of almost having a fear of going out. Do you find
Yeah.
that mental health wise, you have a lot of anxiety and even depression because of that
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Yeah, and even like because of it, but also separate from it, I think like I've always been very anxious, so I think it's just
Magnifies
like
it.
yeah.
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 Makes it worse.
And I'm asking this because sometimes I wonder, I have anxiety and depression myself.
Yeah.
And do you ever feel like your anxiety and depression came from like the fact that you had these issues that weren't diagnosed yet? And so it was like, I know that there's something, but I don't know what it is? Or do you
Yeah.
think that it was there and then the issues and the diagnoses kind of exacerbated it? Does that make sense what I'm...
Yeah. I think the autism, the undiagnosed autism definitely contributed to especially the depression side of things, of just like negative view of yourself and stuff like that. The anxiety, I'm not sure. I think maybe I came out of the womb with anxiety because yeah, just like from the time I was like a preschooler, I was already very anxious. So
Yeah, because sometimes, like doctors, when you go with your symptoms and they're, oh, well, it's just you're anxious,
Yeah.
or oh, it's just your depression. And sometimes it gets me thinking, well, do I have them because it's just I'm wired that way? Or is it because of so long dealing with, oh, it's just in your head, or, well, why don't you just smile more? That'll make you happy. And, those types of things just kind of weigh on you after a while because it's, compiled all over.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely an issue when you do have, I mean, even people that don't have a history of mental health issues, they get that sometimes of it's just anxiety, it's just stress, whatever, but especially if you do have a history of anxiety, it's like everything
Yeah.
has to be that. Like,
Yeah.
even if there's something structurally wrong with your brain, it probably was caused by your anxiety.
Anxiety. Yeah.
Yep,
Your brain is falling out your head. Oh, it's just your anxiety.
Yeah.
pretty much.
But I can hold it in my hand. Yeah, it's just anxiety. And
Yeah.
with your diagnoses, do you feel like it's, with your studies too, have you felt like it's a little different being female versus male, born female or born male?
In terms of
In terms of your being heard, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a gaining awareness that that's a very big thing that happens.
Yeah, and
But
fortunately it does
yeah.
happen. But I just wondered if like you kind of also had that feeling of you're not heard as well because you're born a female and so we can't possibly know what's going on.
Yeah. And even I've noticed like when I was younger and my parents would like when I was a teenager, my parents would come to my appointments. It was usually my mom, but on the off time that it was my dad, they would kind of take it more seriously, even if he was just in the room, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. That they would kind of just listen better with him versus your
Yeah,
mother.
yeah.
And when you're doing your studies, like for speech therapy, in your textbooks, do you feel like it has a bias between females and males?
For like psychology and speech pathology and stuff, it tends to be like more women that are in the field. Nowadays, I mean, especially probably a long time ago, it wasn't the case, but now it's pretty, yeah, I haven't noticed
Well, that's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Did you choose this path to really help people kind of like you, so to speak, and because you know what it's like growing up with that, and you just wanted to help others? Is that kind of why you chose the path?
Yeah, definitely. And a few years ago, for a few years, I was involved with a local autism resource center and did a lot of work with like teens and adults on the spectrum. And there was a lot of them that were like non-speaking or minimally speaking, and who I noticed that they didn't have any alternative ways of communicating. They had never been like given that, and like how frustrating that would be. I
Yeah.
thought, and even when we did certain activities and we would like give them a choice, like a very simple choice, like show them a menu of different like treats that they could choose from. If they could just be given that choice and communicate it by pointing to something, like it seemed like they felt like empowered by that. And it's like such a simple thing. And I thought that should be
That should be universal.
yeah. So that kind of sparked my interest in like communication access, and it's something I'm really passionate about because I don't think anyone, like for lack of resources, should not have access to communicating their
Yeah.
needs.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, when our nephew, he is nonverbal, and when he learned sign language to be able to communicate, you could see the difference in it, how happy he was. He started like singing more and smiling more, and as time went on and he got more ways to communicate, he was totally changed and totally different. And seeing that is awesome, I think, in being able to communicate that we sometimes take for granted because we can talk.
Yeah.
And just the idea of, I mean, hell, I've had issues where I can't get, like right now, I can't get out what I'm trying to say.
Every episode.
Shut up.
Editing's so much fun with you.
And just the idea of not even being able to get anybody to understand that you're trying to get something out. And they're like, well, hurry up, or they just walk away, or they don't even acknowledge that you're trying to speak is disheartening.
Yeah, for sure.
So that field, when you go into work in that field, requires very close connection with people and going out and talking to people or being in classrooms with people. And I know with neurodivergence, social situations situations are difficult. And I know even with myself, I'm not diagnosed neurodivergent or anything, but it scares the shit out of me thinking about doing a job like that. Does that raise a lot of anxiety for you, or do you feel pretty comfortable with that because you're so passionate about it?
Both. Like, I think that the passion dampens the anxiety a bit, or like makes it easier to deal with, because I feel like I have a purpose doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And especially, I think once I actually get into working, it's mostly like one-on-one with the child and their parents, and that's kind of the social settings that I do better in. So, I mean, definitely getting there, and I'm going to conferences and things. That's super anxiety provoking, but
I'm sure. I'm terrible at like public speaking and stuff. I can do this because there's only 3 people watching or seeing me when I'm talking. I don't think about the fact that there might be thousands listening later. So this doesn't bother me. But yeah, public speaking is terrible, and the anxiety, I think that's pretty common in people.
Yeah, for
even,
sure. Yeah.
Even not autistic people.
Yeah. And I'm kind of weird. It's like I'm a little different, even though my therapist says I'm neurodivergent. Again, I'm not sure which, but she made mention of the fact that I have a lot of traits and kind of borderline ADHD with the autism, but I don't have a problem with talking in front of people, but it's not me. Does that make sense? Like I put on a mask.
Okay, yeah.
And I feel like I'm performing some sort of big, huge play. Have you ever felt like you had to mask?
Definitely, like my whole life pretty much. Yeah. Especially before I knew what it was. I always felt like I had to like pretend to be normal and understand what was going on.
That's really unfortunate. Not a good way to live.
No,
no one should have to feel that way.
And it's exhausting. I would imagine that it would be exhausting for you as well. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, just doing the feeling of, okay, now I've got to hype myself up and I've got to put on the mask and pretend like I do this because I'm in love with talking to a lot of people. And I hate talking to people, but at the same time, I like it. And just the mask alone, though, trying to hold it there, and then when you get home, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
How does that kind of interact with your loved ones, with being able to take off the, like, okay, do you have to do you feel like you have to mask with them? Or do you feel like you can be 100% you?
For the most part, I feel like I can be myself. Especially, I mean, I feel like the only person I can completely be myself with is my sister. She's my best friend and my favorite person in the universe. But with my parents, for the most part, but there are still things that
Of course.
They're parents. I mean, I'm 47 and I still kind of don't tell my parents a lot of stuff. It's always, I think it's important that there's at least somebody that we can completely take the mask off for and be ourselves with, because again, it's tiring.
Have you seen autism in your family and other people? Is that something that's in your sister or anything, if you don't mind me asking?
My sister was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago, and like it's pretty intense too. Like but she wasn't diagnosed until 18, I think.
Wow.
Just before going to college. So that's definitely a struggle for her, and there's like overlap in traits for sure between the two of us, but not autism. And then my mother is not diagnosed with anything, but probably has ADHD, we've thought, and she thinks. And my dad is kind of interesting because he has, like, in some ways you would think like he is very stereotypically like a man with autism in some ways, but then like you look at the criteria and stuff and it's like he doesn't quite fit everything. So I don't know if it's just he's got a lot more traits than the average person, and sometimes I think like my mom has like half the traits and my dad has the other half, and so that's how I got all of them. But
our kids, we have 3 kids, one diagnosed autistic, one diagnosed ADHD, and one probably is autistic, but was when she asked her pediatrician, they said even if we were to diagnose you, it wouldn't make a difference because you're so high functioning. So they never actually diagnosed them. So I often wonder how much that happens out there where people aren't diagnosed just because the doctors don't think it's going to make a difference. There's no need for medication or anything.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't necessarily be, well, you need medication, now we'll diagnose you.
Yeah.
It should be, even if you're like, your high needs or low needs, you need that, I guess you could say not really validation, but that type of understanding of what is going on with your thought processes so that you can understand how you can then navigate in the world better.
Yeah.
Not having that idea of what's going on with your brain or even your body sometimes. It's annoying. And it's like, don't tell me that it's normal when I know it's not, and don't give me medication for it necessarily unless I need it. But diagnose me still, because I think it would make a huge difference. I think it helps to understand how you think and why you think that way.
Yeah, for sure. Like that was the biggest thing for me when I got diagnosed. It wasn't that I needed medication or anything like that, but just the self-understanding and
You want to know what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
When you feel like there's something wrong with you, you want to know why.
Yeah.
It definitely validates it. I can understand that.
And it's not necessarily that people are, seeking the diagnosis because it's quote unquote the cool thing to do nowadays, like some people are talking about. That's not it. It's 100%. You just want to know why you feel a certain way, why you think a certain way. So then with knowing that, you can have better conversations, you can have better learning experiences and be better at your job, whatever it is, if you even need a job or have a job. And, it's not about medicine seeking or just, I want to be in the in crowd. I mean, of course, we all want to be in the in crowd, but... but not at the expense of our sanity.
Right.
Have you found you have issues in the workforce? Dory brought up work. Have you found you have issues in the workforce, or has that been fairly easy for you?
It hasn't been easy, but I manage. It really depends on the work environment. I tend to seek out jobs that I know will not be will be compatible with my needs, basically. So like the last summer and this summer, I'm working in a library. That's good. Perfect. It's quiet. Yeah. When I was working at the Autism Center, it was more challenging. Even like when the clients were not there because it was a very big group of students and they were very loud all the time. And I found that I had to have conversations with my supervisor and stuff about solutions because it was very overwhelming. But
I would think it would be kind of overwhelming and a lot of different
personalities.
You've got different personalities, but I think also all of the different tools to use. You've got some things that I remember my brothers having because they had neurodivergence as well. Blocks and colorful blocks and non-colorful blocks and people would come in with a bag of toys and such and books to play with. And I would think sometimes that alone it gets a little noisy, if you will.
Yeah.
Having all of those things with you. It's almost like it's a necessity in some cases, but not always.
And being in a large, loud crowd like that can definitely be a little overwhelming. So is that something that you would go back and do again? It sounded like you really loved that, even though you struggled a little.
That part wasn't, it was more like working with the clients directly. And I often found that, because there was a big group of students doing the programming, I often found that I was able to work more one-on-one with certain teens or whatever, and I really, really enjoyed that, connecting one-on-one. So I think going into speech pathology is probably a good fit based on...
It sounds like you really want to help somebody. You want to help them one-on-one, not in a group, and that's great.
Now, going back a bit, you mentioned that at first you were thinking of OT. What was the thought process that made you switch from OT to speech?
One thing was the physical demands of the job, you handling equipment, maybe having to like lift people and stuff like that. I'm not like with my physical health issues, it probably wouldn't be sustainable. And another thing, like my when my grandparents were living in their house, there was an OT that came there and I got to see a little bit of what they did, and then I was thinking, oh, maybe that's not I don't know, just yeah.
Yeah.
And then like yeah, speech was always like another option. It was kind of like my second option, and then it just came to the forefront. Yeah.
My best friend is a occupational therapist. He was actually our kid's occupational therapist, and hearing about what he does, very similar to what you just explained. He works with a lot of autistic kids, but he's always carrying around a big bag of toys and doing physical activities with everyone, and actually takes a lot of abuse from the kids because some of them don't really understand.
Yeah.
So he gets spit on and hit a lot too. So I could see that being really difficult position.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds like he does more physical than the PT does. It's like when he worked with our kids, he did a lot more physical stuff, and like they were doing back bends and different poses and such. And it's like when they had their PT, it was just like, go run. And so I can see why it's a very hard thing to go into, and with all of that physicality. Yeah. And I can imagine that being speech, though, gives you the same satisfaction of helping those people, but, giving them the means to communicate.
So I'm assuming you are looking to work more with children than adults? Or...
Yeah, that's the plan, yeah. Okay. But, I mean, things can change as I haven't done, like, clinical experience yet, so I'll kind of feel it out and see what...
Well, let us know how that is when you do that.
Yeah. We work with our son's speech therapist, so I've always been a little curious about how that works and how different that would be between kids versus adults.
I've always wondered.
Because adults are usually much harder to work with.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, they can be. At least teaching-wise, sometimes it's a little harder with adults because they're, well, what's in it for me? But with the different types of, I'm assuming that you've worked with some of the different communication tools a little bit for speech therapy. What do you think is one of the better tools, would you say, for trying to help people speak?
I mean, it's definitely an individual thing, and then also there's the element of cost and if insurance would cover things, but the like the apps that you can have, like the communication apps that use photos or typing, like that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how complex you want the communication to be, or you can start with simple things and then expand. I think that just like the limited people I've seen, it's been really beneficial, and for people with like a wide range of communication abilities.
Yeah, I would think that would be one of the easier ones to work with because you can recognize the pictures easier. Like, do you also have to learn sign language, or is that like kind of an extra thing on the side that you would have to do on your own?
Well, I was really surprised because I assumed that like it was a mandatory thing that all speech therapists learned, but it's not. It's like a separate, it's like really only people that want to work with those who are deaf, but like it's such a good tool for people with different, I don't know, like I had a professor this last year who taught in psychology but was previously a speech therapist, and when he said like he was teaching about sign language but he didn't know any sign language, and I was like, what? Like I thought
I would think that would be one of the biggest tools that would help, because being able to use your hands and doing a tactile type of sign language, or the regular sign language, would help you open up a world of vocabulary for people, because sometimes I've read that some people, even though they can hear, it's easier to speak with sign language than to actually, try and talk. So I would think that would be an important aspect of being a speech therapist, because sign language is speech.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you're not using your tongue, but it's still speech.
And the whole point of speech therapy is to learn how to communicate. And people who can't talk need a way to communicate.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
And even if you can talk, again, you need ways to communicate. Sometimes it's really not easy to come up with a sentence. I mean, sometimes I black out on what in the word is that I'm looking for.
All the time.
Shut up. And so with your advocacy, back to that a bit, what are you hoping to do with it? Like, what do you want to do with your advocacy? Are you hoping for tours or for being able to be on those picket lines and hell no, we won't go type of thing? And what are you looking forward to for...
tours? No, I don't know. Like, I'm just starting small, just by sharing my story and being there for other people to reach out to who might have similar experiences or want to learn more. I found that social media is a very accessible way for me to do that because, like I said, I don't go out much. And yeah, just like raising awareness, and I think there's a lot of power in sharing our own stories and like maybe helping other people feel seen in that. And I've also just as of today become a volunteer with Hydrocephalus Canada as a like peer mentor. So that's going to be fun
really
too.
awesome. And when, I say tours or things like that, and it's like I've noticed that some do tours, some do campaigns, things like that. And I want to stress that that's not the only way that you can be an advocate.
No.
Right.
We have to do it within our own abilities too. We can't all be marching on, Washington or Toronto or yes, or wherever you are. It's not always easy. So if you can, get out the word, spread awareness, share your story, whether it's through a podcast or, any type of social media is really helpful.
Sharing your story, I think, is the most important.
Yeah.
Other people need to hear it, need to hear what's wrong with the system, and maybe the right person will hear it one day.
Yeah, and if we can use this to keep children and adults from feeling like, oh, well, it's just me, then, that's kind of the biggest issue that I think a lot of people have is that the depression really hits hard, even when you do have the answer. Sometimes you get depressed afterwards because, okay, now I know what it is, but now what? What do I, what am I doing with this? How can this change my life? And can it be better or is it going to be worse? And I appreciate that you do kind of mention things and talk about your journey through, disabilities and reminding us that it isn't a bad word to say disability because it's true. We are not able to do everything, but able-bodied people can't do everything either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really not that bad.
Right.
It's hard sometimes to put yourself out there and make yourself vulnerable. And so I have to commend you for that because that is definitely not easy to be, hey, guess what? This is what I have. And I'm going to tell the whole world that this is what I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're uncomfortable your whole life because you feel different.
Yeah.
And then to build up the courage to tell everyone, maybe I was a little different, and here's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that bad after all.
Yeah, and I commend you, and I thank you, and everything for that, because we need people like you willing to tell us, this is what I have, and this is why I have it, or this is possibly why I have it. And we need awareness for everything, because not everything is just infants and old adults.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The U.S. government really needs to hear it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Our government, and sharing that, because sometimes it's hard for us here with what's going on with our, I don't even understand, wanting to go back to 1939. And it's terrifying, but we got to keep pushing the narrative that we're human, and thank you. Because we deserve to live, whether or not we're paying taxes, whether or not we're working, whether or not we can go to school or not. We're humans. That's our value. And thank you.
Absolutely.
You said it very well.
Thank you.
That's what this whole podcast is about.
Yeah, sometimes I can actually get this crap out of my mouth. Sometimes I can't.
Unfortunately, we are at about the hour mark, the end of our session here. I definitely want to thank you very much for joining us. This was a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you.
Thank you so much.
Until next time.
Until next. I was about to say, are you going to say anything? But no.
No. Sometimes I just run out of thoughts.
We all do. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris. graphics by Joshua Morse, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.